Disneyland built its reputation as the original park, smaller, more personal, and for decades home to some of the best theme park dining anywhere in the country. Restaurants so iconic they're built right into the attractions themselves. Tables so hard to book that regulars used to reserve them months out without a second thought, treating certain reservations as a fixed part of the trip before anything else got planned. That reputation is being tested right now. Prices have been climbing across nearly every dining tier in the last 2 years. Fine dining, character buffets, counter service, dining packages, while quality, portions, and service have quietly been moving the other direction at the same time. Longtime annual pass holders, the people who visit often enough to actually notice a slow drift rather than a single bad day, are openly cutting back on reservations they used to make without thinking twice. From New Orleans Square to the Grand Californian Hotel, these are places built on decades of goodwill that are increasingly trading on that goodwill instead of earning it meal by meal. This is a planning guide for anyone who doesn't want to burn a hard-won reservation or a real chunk of a vacation budget on a Disneyland meal that peaked years ago. 12 restaurants, backed by recent price changes and guest reviews you can go read yourself. Here's which ones to skip. Number 12, Blue Bayou. This is the most iconic restaurant in Disneyland. You're eating inside Pirates of the Caribbean itself, boats floating past your table, open since 1967, with Walt Disney's own involvement in the design. For decades, that setting alone carried the entire experience. The dim bayou twilight, the crickets and frogs piped in through hidden speakers, the balloon lanterns floating overhead. It was worth paying more than the food alone deserved, because nowhere else on the property could you eat dinner inside a working attraction while boats full of guests floated silently past your table. Here's what's changed. Recent guests report entrees arriving barely warm. Filet mignon and ribeye served without the sides that were supposed to come with them, missing butter and sour cream on baked potatoes that guests had to specifically ask a server to bring out. One recent visitor summed up a $180 dinner for two bluntly, saying people need to stop pretending that's acceptable just because it's Disney. Another guest described a 50th anniversary dinner where neither the host nor the server noticed the occasion, despite it being listed right on the reservation, in a room too loud and chaotic to even hear the Bayou sound design, with a 2-year staff member who, when asked, didn't know the restaurant's signature fireflies were supposed to exist at all. The ambiance hasn't changed. The setting is still there, still genuinely unlike anywhere else at Disneyland, but what's actually landing on the table has gotten worse, while the check has gotten louder. A restaurant's whole pitch here is that you're paying for the setting, not the food, and that only works if the food still shows up warm, complete, and with the sides you ordered. Number 11, Napier Rose. This restaurant was long considered the second best restaurant in all of Disney's parks, trailing only Victoria and Albert's on the other coast. Upscale California cuisine, an extensive wine list, a genuine fine dining anchor for the entire Disneyland Resort, the kind of place regulars planned entire hotel stays around and saved for special occasions. It closed for a lengthy refurbishment, originally slated to reopen in fall of 2025. That reopening kept slipping, month after month, past one announced date and then another. And the restaurant didn't actually return until February of 2026, months later than guests had originally been told to expect. Longtime reviewers who had tracked Napa Rose for years came away with the same conclusion after visiting the reopened version. Its standing had fallen slightly even before the closure, and fallen substantially since. This is a restaurant that used to be mentioned in the same breath as genuine Michelin-starred dining, the kind of reputation that takes decades of consistency to build and considerably less time to lose once the standards start slipping. When the people who ranked you second best in the entire Disney portfolio now say they'd rather eat elsewhere in the same hotel, a fresh coat of paint, new furniture, and a reimagined patio haven't fixed the actual problem sitting underneath all of it. Number 10, Carthay Circle. Modeled after the original Hollywood movie palace where Snow White premiered back in 1937, Carthay Circle is one of Disney California Adventure's 2 signature fine dining anchors, built to feel like a genuine culinary destination with theming meticulous enough that walking up the staircase feels like stepping into another era entirely. Entrees run $35 to nearly $60 per adult, squarely in the resort's most expensive dining tier alongside Napa Rose. The theming is gorgeous, the setting photographs beautifully, and it's easy to see why it's become a go-to for special occasions. And that's exactly the problem. When the room is doing that much of the work, it becomes very easy for the kitchen to coast on it without guests immediately noticing. One repeat Disneyland guest summed up a recent visit flatly, saying it was okay, but they decided they probably wouldn't eat there again, with the same visit noting that Blue Bayou delivered a noticeably better meal at a comparable price point during the same trip. At close to $60 an entree, okay, probably won't be back, is the verdict on a restaurant that stopped earning its price tag on food alone and started charging almost entirely for the room it's served in. Number 9, Plaza Inn. A Disneyland original since opening day back in 1955, famous almost entirely for one dish. Fried chicken, good enough that regulars compare it favorably to dedicated fried chicken chains, the same dish Walt Disney himself reportedly loved to order. The chicken entree now runs $21.99, with pot roast and salmon both sitting at $19.99. Prices a longtime reviewer who's covered the restaurant for years flatly called bordering on table service meal prices for what remains a cafeteria-style counter service format where you're still carrying your own tray to the table. Dessert portions have shrunk too. Carrot cake slices are now roughly half the size they used to be. at the same price point they always were, which is the kind of change that's easy to miss on one visit and impossible to miss once you notice it. That same longtime reviewer wrote that Plaza Inn has become less of a staple and more of a splurge for their family, adding that the cost genuinely does feel excessive now compared to what it used to be. The fried chicken is still the reason most people come here in the first place, and it remains the one dish that consistently delivers. But when a counter service restaurant's prices start acting like table service without the format actually changing to match, that's a value proposition quietly breaking down in plain sight, one visit at a time. Number 8, Storyteller's Cafe. This buffet-style character dining spot sits inside the Grand Californian Hotel, positioned as the more upscale alternative to Goofy's Kitchen, with craftsman theming standing in for cartoon chaos and a generally calmer dining room to match. For years, that positioning genuinely worked. A classier setting, a calmer atmosphere, worth a little extra for guests who wanted character dining without the noise and chaos of a louder buffet elsewhere on property. But longtime observers who've tracked the restaurant closely over multiple years and multiple visits note something telling about where things stand now. The massive morning crowds that used to spill out of Storytellers and block the walkway leading into the parks have quietly disappeared without any single announcement marking the shift. That's not a small detail to notice for anyone who's watched this pattern before. When a restaurant's crowds are visibly shrinking at the same time, character dining prices across the entire resort keep climbing higher. That's not a coincidence playing out on its own. That's guests doing the math independently, one family at a time, and simply walking away from a reservation they used to make automatically without a second thought. Number 7, Goofy's Kitchen. One of Disneyland's most beloved character buffets since the 1980s, serving breakfast and brunch with Goofy and friends in a bright, loud, kid-focused atmosphere built for exactly that audience, and beloved by generations of families for exactly that reason. In a single price update, breakfast jumped from $55 to $65 per adult, and lunch and dinner climbed from $64 to $75, somewhere around 18 to 20%, all in one move, with children's pricing climbing right alongside the adult numbers rather than being held steady. That's not a gradual inflation adjustment spread out to soften the impact. That's a single decision that the family price anchor at one of Disneyland's most popular character meals could absorb a much bigger jump all at once, and that guests either wouldn't notice right away or wouldn't push back on hard enough to matter to the bottom line. Number 6, Carnation Cafe, a Main Street fixture since 1955, home to Walt's Chili and decades of comfort food goodwill, with entrees that now run $20 to $26 for full table service in a restaurant that used to be the dependable mid-tier choice on Main Street for generations of visiting families. One repeat guest specifically named Carnation as one of the restaurants they've personally noticed declining in quality since the pandemic reopening, and recent reviews describe wilted, spoiled lettuce and overcooked, lukewarm shrimp on salads that used to be reliable trip after trip, along with a stale bun and a mushy patty on a veggie burger order that should have been one of the simplest things on the entire menu to get right. A restaurant coasting on 70 years of nostalgia still has to get something as basic as shrimp temperature correct in 2026, and by multiple recent accounts, it lately hasn't been. Number 5, GCH Craftsman Bar and Grill. Tucked inside the Grand Californian Hotel lobby, this table service spot has historically been one of the resort's better-kept secrets for a relaxed, lower-key meal away from the parks entirely. Recent guest reports describe consistently slow service and food that's become genuinely hit or miss from one visit to the next, with staff themselves attributing the slowdown to a kitchen shared with both Storyteller's Cafe and hotel room service all at once. A resource strain that only intensified while Napa Rose sat closed for its long refurbishment and guests had fewer full-service alternatives left anywhere in the same hotel. Sharing a kitchen with 2 other operations isn't something a guest should ever have to think about while ordering dinner, but when the wait times and inconsistency show up directly on your own table, it becomes exactly that anyway. The guest's problem to plan around and eat through. Number 4, the Phantasmic Dining Package at Riverbell Terrace. This package runs $89 per person for a fixed 3-course menu, paired with reserved seating for one of Disneyland's most beloved nighttime shows. Built to feel like a can't-miss splurge that solves the problem of fighting for a viewing spot while guaranteeing a decent view for the whole family. One recent guest described the entree course as a tiny piece of fried chicken tender, a sliver of dried brisket, and an oddly assembled chicken sandwich that was genuinely difficult to eat, with the dessert described bluntly as weird pudding. It's closer to something you'd find at the back of a hotel banquet than a headline dessert. Another guest reported being seated directly behind a support pillar in the reserved section, and told outright they couldn't move seats or stand up for a better view of the show they'd paid extra specifically to guarantee. Reserved seating that isn't actually a clear view, with zero recourse when it isn't, stops being a premium experience the moment you sit down. You're paying $89 for a problem that didn't actually get solved, attached to a dinner most people wouldn't have ordered at all if it weren't bundled in. Number 3, World of Color Dining Packages. These packages, offered at multiple restaurants around Disney California Adventure, pair a meal with reserved viewing for the nighttime spectacular, and prices climbed another $5 to $6 in a recent update, following earlier increases of $3 to $10 on the Phantasmic side of the resort in that same rough window, as if both shows' packages were being adjusted in step with each other. One longtime resort tracker, who's followed these specific price changes for years, put it bluntly, that these packages were already overpriced before any of this started, and they're now sitting in what they flatly called obscene territory. What makes the timing worse is that these packages are getting more expensive at the exact moment regular unreserved viewing for both nighttime shows has gotten noticeably easier to secure on your own, and without paying for a package at all. You're increasingly paying a real premium to solve a crowding problem that's mostly stopped being much of a problem in the first place, which is about the worst timing a price increase can have. Number 2, Lamplight Lounge. Sitting on Pixar Pier with waterfront views of Paradise Bay, this restaurant serves table service dining upstairs with a more casual walk-up bar, downstairs for guests who just want a drink and a snack. Entrees and shared plates here were hit with price increases of $1 to $4 as part of a broad wave that swept across most of the resort's mid-tier table service restaurants in the summer of 2025, touching multiple menus at once, rather than one restaurant in isolation. No single increase on its own is dramatic enough to complain about individually. That's exactly the point of doing it this way. It's the same story playing out resort-wide. Small, steady bumps on the shareable items families specifically count on to stretch a meal across a group, adding up to real money across a full bill without any single price change ever being big enough on its own to trigger a complaint. And number 1, Cafe Orleans. Sitting in New Orleans Square right next to Blue Bayou, Cafe Orleans has long been considered the smarter value pick over its more famous, more expensive neighbor. A similar Monte Cristo sandwich, the same themed square and river views, for noticeably less money on the check at the end of the meal. That value gap is exactly what's been quietly narrowing over the past year. Cafe Orleans' entrees were included in that same summer 2025 resort-wide price wave that hit Blue Bayou, Carnation Cafe, Lamplight Lounge, and several other mid-tier restaurants across the resort at the same time. None of these increases were announced individually or loudly, and none came with an explanation attached. They landed quietly on menus guests had specifically trusted to stay the affordable option in a resort where affordable options keep getting harder to find. Cafe Orleans built its entire reputation on being the smart alternative to Blue Bayou's prices, and that reputation gets a little harder to defend every single time its own menu creeps $1 or $2 closer to matching them. None of these 12 restaurants failed overnight, and the pattern here isn't limited to one price tier or one park. Fine dining, character buffets, counter service, and dining packages have all seen the same story play out inside roughly the same 12 to 18 months. Prices climbing faster than the experience improves, portions and perks quietly shrinking, and guest-facing cuts arriving while the sticker prices keep getting louder every few months. From a $22 Plaza Inn chicken plate to an 18% overnight jump at Goofy's Kitchen, the message across both parks is the same one guests on the other coast are already reaching about their own Disney World reservations. Reputation alone doesn't buy the benefit of the doubt anymore, no matter how many decades it took to build. So here's what I want to know. And which of these 12 burned you the worst? And what did you book instead that actually delivered on what you paid for? Drop it in the comments below. I want the specifics, not just the name. And if this saved you from a reservation you would have regretted, go ahead and hit subscribe, because this pattern isn't limited to one coast. Check the description for the Disney World version of this same breakdown.